Welcome everybody who's either here or viewing us on live stream. And we'll get right down to business and approve our agenda for this evening. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
Nothing for me, Randy.
Is there a motion, please, on page 2?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the agenda as printed.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll move forward with our agenda as presented and go where we always go first, and that's the superintendent's report. Mark?
Well, we have a full agenda, a lot of reports that we're going to be presenting this evening, so we'll start with the first one is our bond project update, and Johnny Edwards is here to present that.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Beelang, as well as members of the Board of Education. Tonight's presentation for our school bond update.
There.
It's good. Thank you. So tonight, I want to talk about 4 different areas, and after each area, I'll pause for comment so that we don't get lost in the presentation. Our first area we'll talk about is our 2019 unallocated contingency request. Secondly, I just want to share some photos around construction, and each month I want to just inform the board of some photos. And then thirdly, we talk about our change order process. And last but not least is our scope and sequence update. So first, for our contingency request, want to share with the board that the board has some dollars allocated for unallocated contingency for various projects. And this particular project is not on the board's priority list, but I want to ask permission to be able to use some dollars for this particular small project. At North Middle School, we would like to install a handrail system in the main stairway. The handrail system will divide traffic for students traveling up and down the stairs. This handrail system would be similar to what we already have at Central Middle School. North Middle School was built first. Central Middle School was built second. And this handrail system is in place at Central Middle School. I did work with OAK. Tom Stanek, who's here, helped us secure 3 quotes. The cost for that project is $12,470. It is the lowest bid. That vendor is Division 5 Metalworks. We would like to do this particular project this summer. With your approval, it would require us to order the material. It'll take a couple of weeks, 3 weeks for fabrication, and then 2 days for installing. This came by way of the principal, Dr. Travis Thompson, and thought that this would be a beneficial addition to the school based on the flow of traffic. So even though this is below the board's threshold for approval, we didn't want to move ahead without having a conversation with the board. And if we could get some measure of feedback or thumbs up from the board to proceed with this project, I would like to move forward with that. So, any questions or comments or reservations or any thoughts that you would like to share about this particular project? All right. Head nods, thumbs up. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, and I'll work with Tom from OAK to start moving with this particular project.
It's a hard sell, Johnny.
All right. Secondly, Central Elementary construction has begun. Behind that caption is just one of the renderings that you may have seen from our past presentation. Just wanted to show this beautiful photo of Central Elementary School students with their staff in front of the playground. The playground is the first area to be impacted by construction because the school will sit near the playground where the current playground has just been torn to piece where it formerly sat. So this is a picture I just wanted to share with the board. Here's another photo as well of the playground as it is being taken apart. And as the playground is now completely off-site, basketball hoops are being torn up. They will be reused at the relocated playground in the fall. Here we have a ticket booth that impacts our construction drive. So this is before that ticket booth was removed to another location, moved to another location. This is our construction drive. If you've driven past Central Elementary School or Central Middle School, you'll see that this is our construction traffic road, and it is fenced off for safety reasons. Dirt was brought in for that. This is a view from the street looking at the construction road. More bulldozers moving dirt around. You'll also see there's fencing along our property for the school as well. Make sure students don't move into our construction zone. Here we had to create a curb cut for entrance into the property. And you'll see the contractors are recreating that sidewalk and a curb cut for the utility trucks to get onto the campus. And this is just another view of our construction project as well. You can obviously see Central Middle School from back there. So that's our photo collage. If there's any questions or thoughts, I'll be happy to answer them. But construction is underway, and we're happy for that. Part 3 of our presentation, I'm going to ask Tom Stanek from OAK, as well as Ron Heron, who is our former assistant superintendent, and he's also our part of our team for Plant Moran, our owner's rep. Tom will talk to you a little bit about the bidding process, and then Ron and I will tag team the change order process. So Tom will cover around 6 areas for you. In your memo, in your board packet, is a copy of that from Tom's.
All right, so I'll try to summarize this real quick. It's a lengthy process that typically takes about 6 weeks once we receive the final documents from Tower Pinkster and Fielding. And we're excited from where we're at today. We are actually going to be going out to bid for Central here just in a month and a half in June, so we're getting excited about that. So one of the first things that we do is we prepare a construction manual, and what that involves is that it's really a complementary manual that complements what Tower Pinkster's already put together, and in that we try to identify scopes of work. And what we're trying to do from the very beginning is just try to get the best value for Portage. And in doing that, we really put together our scopes, and that really takes about 2 weeks to do that. In that, we also try to identify what type of scopes of work make the most sense for the contractors, so that the contractors, when they come and they bid that, they understand what they're bidding at, and they get the best value for the district. From an advertisement standpoint, we advertise on the plan rooms, and then we also send out notifications internally to let contractors know that, hey, we've got a project that's coming out to bid in a month or 2 months. And a lot of those are contractors that we use, and I think that's a good tool to let contractors plan ahead, especially in today's market. From a bidding administration, when that technically goes out to the contractors, there's a lot of types of that we'll get a lot of questions that might revolve around whether the drawings or whether it's around the scopes of work. And that's an opportunity to provide more information to the contractors to make sure that they really understand what's happening with the scope. From a bidding opening standpoint, we have to do that from a public standpoint. So we open the bids publicly. Make sure that they are meeting all the requirements, and from a bid bond standpoint, and understanding that they know that they're going to meet the schedule. We take that a step further from the bid review process, and in doing that, we sit down with the entire team, that's including Tower Pinkster and Fielding, that all sit in a room and really kind of drill the contractors to make sure that they understand what the scope of work is from a scheduling perspective, and we want to make sure that we close all the gaps. It's also another opportunity to have them bring any voluntary alternates that maybe we didn't necessarily think of. So it's an opportunity for them to share what they thought of the documents and provide some potential opportunities. So that's a good process that we go through, and that takes usually about a week to do that. And eventually, once we get all the contractors, the low qualified contractor, we put that together in essentially a bid summary for the board, for you guys to take a look at where all the numbers have come in and to evaluate and to say, okay, here's the contractors that we're looking forward to moving forward with the project. So it's kind of quick snapshot of the bid summary, but it's a lengthy process, and we appreciate when the team all comes together and puts together good documents. That makes it really easy to get the contractors on board.
Any questions about bidding? Again, this is a precursor to Central Elementary that'll be going out for bids.
Johnny and Tom, a quick question about timing. So if this process really gets underway with Central in, say, mid-June, then when would the board expect to start seeing some of that come to us? Would that be July, August?
Yeah, I would suspect at the end of June, early July for that first bid package. Yep. So,
Will the bid package that comes at the end of June, early July, will that include everything for the whole project, or is it just pieces of the project?
yeah, great question. We initially broke out the whole project in really two big phases, and we're doing the site work right now, and that was to take an opportunity of the summer to get an early start there. So as the drawings were finished and developed there, then we would hit the ground running with the footings and the foundations and the electrical and the balance of the work here this midsummer.
And as we go through other parts of the presentation, if we need to go back and talk about the bidding work, we can do that. So I want to talk a little bit about change order process. Ron will cover this slide, and I'll cover the following slide as well. At the end of your board package is a memo from me kind of explaining this in more detail.
Good evening, trustees. Good to see you again in this venue. I just wanted to spend just a few seconds to talk about the change order process. As many of you know, it's a very critical process to the success of the overall project, and it's something that will continue through the duration of the project. And the board will get involved eventually in seeing some change orders come your way. But how they get to you, I just really want to talk about kind of how the team works together, both to make sure that we identify necessary changes for the project. We get together with the architect, the contractor, and the owner's rep. We look at those and we identify which ones are necessary for us to do in the project. After we've identified those, they get evaluated, and then I work with PPS, the owner, and we really talk about whether or not we want to validate those changes and to see if they're really necessary and whether we can afford them, right? And whether the board budget will support them. So the owner's rep, the owner gets together, we talk about those, we make sure that they are valid, and they're going to give us the value that we want at the price that we want. So that's all I have for that. I think there's another piece to this as well.
Yes. So with change orders, they come at different price tags. What we've done for this project, and it's similar to the last project, that our owner's rep, who's working with us and working with our contractors, if there's a need for a change order that's under $10,000, that we're authorizing them to be able to make that. In all cases, again, the owner's rep will be communicating with us as the owners about any change orders that's still within the $10,000 range. In the last project, it was at $5,000. We thought it would be best, given our rising cost, to make it a little bit more reflective of the rising cost of construction and raise that to $10,000 or $9,999. As Assistant Superintendent of Operations, my authority would be any change orders that's less than $50,000. And again, that's with communication with our superintendent as well. Our superintendent's authority would be up to $100,000 for a change order. And then any change order that's greater than $100,000 would formally come to the board for approval. But in all of these cases, particularly for the larger sums, we would apprise the board of any change orders so you can be aware of what's going on throughout the project as well. Within these budgets are contingencies, so when we talk about where does the money come from, with the bidding process and as things go out to bid, there's a contingency for both the CM as well as us as the owner to address some of these change orders. So that's the third leg of our project around bidding as well as our change order process and our change order cost. And before we go to the fourth and final portion, I'd like to pause, give the board members any time for questions that they may have on the third portion of this.
Well, we appreciate the presentation. It's particularly important for our new board members to understand how this process works because it has worked very successfully for us in the past. Some of us were on the board when we didn't have a bid process and a change order process put to writing and practice. And from experience, this works a lot better. And it might say, $1 up to $9,999, but the board is informed of all these things as we go, even though we don't have approval. So, just appreciate you putting the process together, and it gives us a good understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions before the fourth and final portion? Here's our fourth and final portion of the presentation. As we get through the slide, I'm going to ask Doug Phillips as well to join me to talk about one particular area within this slide as well. Doug is also a part of the Plant Moran team, and he'll talk to you a little later about market conditions. All right. So this is our fourth and final area of tonight's presentation around the 2021 bond scope and sequence. There are 4 areas of objectives that I would like to cover. One, I want to summarize the decision-making process for our bond projects. Secondly, I want to recognize the need for ongoing flexibility in decision-making for bond projects. Third, I want to understand the rationale for identifying the third school in the bond project. And then fourth, I want to share a budget forecast. So those are our 4 objectives for this portion of the presentation. As always, I'd like to just keep at the forefront our guiding principles. These 8 areas have served as a foundation for our decisions that we have to make for our 2021 bond. At any given meeting that we're having with our team, we often have to pause to reflect on the guiding principles and make sure that our decisions are aligned with the principles and that our decisions do not conflict with those decisions, with those principles. I also want to share the organizational structure. This was shared with the board at the very beginning of our project, and given that we do have new board members and some who may not have noticed, this is our organizational structure. This graphic depicts a visual representation for us. At the core, the team comprises of our PPS staff, along with Tower, Pinkster, and Fielding International, who are our architects, OAK, the construction manager firm, Plant Moran, our owner's rep. And so far today, we have engaged the building advisory teams and the entire staff at both Central Elementary and Haverhill. So when we're making decisions, most recently as we're moving towards the announcement of our third school, we wanted to talk about some drivers. The first, for the total program, we do understand that Central and Haverhill, their new schools will be built on site while their students remain in their existing building. After Central L is completed, it will be demoed. Haverhill will remain open and will be used for a swing school for at least Woodland and England Road. Given the site logistics for Woodland and Anglin Road, we are unable to keep those schools in operation as we construct their new schools. The Amberley project is somewhat different, as its existing school can remain in operation while we construct the new school. Also with operations with a swing school, at a later time, we'll talk about start and ending times of having two schools in operation on the same site, as well as schedules of how we coexist while both schools are in existence. Secondly, another decision driver we talked about was our school building conditions. We looked at when the schools were built, what renovations have been done since they've been in existence, and also what could be some potential problems we would foresee in our buildings. So that was another driver. We continuously monitor those conditions, but we also talked about our new buildings versus renovations. We're prioritizing the construction of our 5 new schools versus the renovation. Morrisbridge will undergo some version of a renovation, but the extent of that renovation has not been totally defined. Our fourth driver, we're continuously monitoring our market conditions, and I'm going to ask Doug Phillips, who's the Senior Vice President of Plant Moran Cressa, who's our owner's rep, to talk about this particular slide.
Good evening, Board. It's a pleasure to be here. Johnny saved me this really pleasant slide, information that is in reality stuff we've all been dealing with in all aspects of our lives over the last few years. But this is data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracking cost escalation in new construction nationally. The darker line is across all market sectors, and the green line is relative to school construction. It's a 5-year capture of data from 2018 through the beginning of this year. The 2 vertical lines that are represented on the chart are the first line is in the fall of 2019, the budget for this new elementary school bond program was established. At the time, the intent for the district was to go to the voters to fund the project in 2020. Of course, we all know what happened in the spring of 2020 when a crisis essentially landed upon really the whole planet. And the district made a prudent decision at that time, hey, let's hold off, figure out what's going on, how are we going to teach school, how are we have a lot more important things to deal with. A year later, though, we kind of got a handle on the COVID pandemic situation, and the board was ready to authorize the district to go to the voters to fund the program. That is the approval that was gained in August of 2021, and you can see there was a little escalation in between there, but it wasn't as dramatic as what has happened almost immediately from there forward. We are seeing then totally in the 5-year period across the U.S. Escalation of construction costs of 40+% across all sectors, a little bit better in schools at 37%. But it's been a very dramatic impact on what can be achieved for your dollars of investment in a program.
Thank you, Doug. And so these were the 4 areas of our decision-making drivers. And then our 5th area was related to cash flow. Just last month, Paula Johnson, our Director of Finance, talked a little bit about bond series. And so once we passed the bond in 2021, want to make sure we all know that all the proceeds do not come to us at one time. We receive those funds over time. For this bond, we will receive the funds over 4 series. The 4 series were designed to maximize the size of future bonds without raising millage rates. In the top circle, you'll see that the district sold $50 million worth of bonds in Series 1 back in November 2021. By next month, we will have sold an additional $10 million in bonds. The first 2 bond series sales equate to roughly $60 million. We have 2 remaining series to sell. We expect to sell the 3rd series sometime in 2025. We expect to sell the 4th series around 2026. The last two series will be worth a combined $115,725,000. All four of those series sold will equate to the grand total of the bond, which is $175,725,000. So as we are looking at our 2021, here's our status. So we continue to monitor our cash flow along with the construction schedule. Secondly, we're keeping the scope and scale of our education specifications. I just want to share our ed specs were done, completed around 2019, and that really drove our roadmap to what we consider the future of education to be in Portage Public Schools. And as we're designing schools and building for the future, those schools are incorporated a lot of collaborative spaces for students, flexible seating and choice for students. And it is not our traditional hallways and double corridors that you'll see in our existing buildings. We also got a lot of input from our staff and our community around those ed specifications. So the work that we're doing is staying true to the ed specs that were drafted for this project. Thirdly, we're prioritizing new construction over the renovation. As I mentioned earlier, Moore's Bridge is set to have some renovations. But then fourth and finally, we are projecting a shortfall to complete the remaining projects. I'm going to ask Ron here to just talk to the board a little bit about 2019. As you know, Ron was our Assistant Superintendent of Operations. So I wanted to share a little bit about these allocations that were earmarked in 2019.
Yeah, I really felt that it was necessary to give the context to us developing numbers that equaled the $175 million that we went to the voters with back in 2019. In 2018, we had just finished building the last bond series, and we had built, two middle schools. Both of those buildings, and I'm going to get into the size because it'll kind of tell you how things have changed. And each of those buildings were about 155,000 square feet. We built those buildings for about $35 million. So I want you to keep that in your context. We worked in 2018 when we started discussing with the voters. We started to put together numbers to anticipate building the elementaries. And these are the numbers that you see here that were developed at that time based on our experience that we had just come out of. So, as you'll see in the next slide that Johnny will give you, we'll talk about the 2023 numbers. You'll see how vastly different they are compared to what we allocated back in 2019. And I want you to keep one number in mind is the square footage. 155,000 square foot in the middle schools for about $35 million. And just to let you know, the elementaries are about 75?
70 and 80.
Thousand, about half the size. So, there you go. Drum roll.
I don't know. So in 2023, what we've done, thinking about the last slide about the rising cost and that inflation component that Doug talked about, what we've been doing now is looking at, as the market condition has changed, how do those values translate into our existing project, given what we know now? Central Elementary, we're anticipating that to be close to $40 million, and Haverhill to be close to $36 million, approximately. Once the bids come in, we'll have a better idea. But as we're looking at the remaining portions of our project, in today's dollar, we believe that this total project will cost us approximately $266,290,000 to complete in its entirety. Also understanding that we are carrying forward buses technology and bond cost as neutral, but we do know in reality we will anticipate some changes with bus costs and technology costs, but we kept the allocations the same. So that's a difference between 2019 versus 2023, and that's reflective in the graphic that Doug shared with you. So you may say, well, what are our opportunities to close this funding gap? So first and foremost, we do have some monies available in our 2019 unallocated contingency. We could explore using some of those funds for buses and/or technology. Secondly, we have our current site and sinking fund and potentially future site and sinking fund dollars for eligible expenditures. The rules are a little different for building site and sinking fund dollars, but that's something we could explore. The third area we could explore is our competitive grants. While competitive grants come about from time to time for different things like technology, there's an opportunity to find a grant that aligns with this project, we would hope to explore that. And then our fourth and final piece would be to look at a future bond proposal in 2025 or 2026. So these are some opportunities for us in terms of closing that gap. With that being said, I want to share a graphic of what we project, given what we know. Central and Haver Hills construction, those timelines have been produced. We previously announced that Amberley would be our third school. Tonight I would like to share that we would like to name Woodland as our third school, with that construction beginning in the summer of 2025 and the new Woodland opening in the fall of 2027. That also talks about Woodland being a part of Haverhill as a swing school. Then our fourth school that we will still be working and planning for would be the summer 2027 and take us through a fall opening of 2029. Based on that previous slide about our costs that we're looking at for schools, we believe that we can get 4 projects done with the existing $175 million that the voters have approved. So why Woodland? 3 areas of that are cash flow. I talked about our bond series sales. Our cash flow aligns with a construction schedule for Woodland. In short, what we have to do is always, we have to pay our bills, so we pay our bills as cash comes in, and we want to be fiscally responsible with our cash flow. Secondly, we're considering incorporating Curious Kids program into Woodland. That's something that our Director of Elementary Education, Dr. Kelly Jensenius, has been talking about some of our pros of that. Right now, as you know, Curious Kids share a building with Community High. We believe there are some educational benefits to including them with Woodland Elementary School. If we choose to go down this road, it would also lower the student capacity at PCEC, which is our oldest existing building. Then third and finally, by using Woodland as our third school, this keeps our swing school in operation. We don't want to have a school sit vacant for any portion of this project, and so this schedule aligns Woodland to move into the existing Haverhill right after Haverhill moves out. So those are our 3 primary reasons for Woodland. And then lastly, just want to summarize our objectives from the beginning. We wanted to summarize our decision-making process for our bond projects. Secondly, we want to recognize the need for ongoing flexibility and decision-making for bond projects, and understanding that these numbers are continuously refined as we get more information. Thirdly, we want to understand the rationale for identifying the third school, which is Woodland, in this project. And then fourthly, we wanted to share a budget forecast. We will keep the board apprised if we see any major market shifts in pricing, both up or down, over the course of this project. So that was our fourth and final leg of tonight's presentation. And I want to pause and give the board an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have on this fourth portion of the project.
So it,
And I can also go back to any slides that you want to display as well.
Johnny, in going back to the voters, the slide said maybe 25 or 26 for the funds to complete it, are there scenarios that would have other old bonds expiring that would allow us to go to the voters to say that we can finish it with money and we would not have to add to the millage rate?
That's absolutely correct. We're working with our bond counsel. Paula Johnson does an outstanding job with working with Baker Tilly, who handles our projections. And they are looking at potential projections for us in the future. Again, as we get closer to those dates, we'll have a better sense. But in all the scenarios we are asking them to run or consider, they're under the guidelines of a no increase to the tax millage. So 25 or 26 would be the earliest we can go to the voters.
I just wanted to underscore that that was part of our rationale back in, was it 20 or 21, when we said, let's pause. Part of it was the uncertainty of the pandemic right then. And also, that proposal came to us with like a 0.9 millage increase. And we all went back and reworked the schedule and delayed a year and figured out a way to make it fit with no millage increase, which I thought was a real benefit for that scenario.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the information about not leaving Haverhill vacant. That totally makes sense to me. You got to upkeep a building where no one's there. Who knows what can happen in the meantime? It seems like a really smart move to do that, so good thinking.
Thank you.
I just noticed a big difference, obviously, between the 2019 projections and 2023 costs. Is all of that due to inflation, or do you think that we were more conservative in 2019 when coming up with the projections, or would you say that it's all due to inflation?
Yes, as Ron talked about in the 2019, those were solid numbers.
Okay.
And what we anticipate is throughout the state, there will be other communities having a similar narrative about projects that were passed within the last, 2-3 years prior to the pandemic coming about. So yeah, those were good numbers, and for scale, as Ron mentioned, the cost of the new Central Elementary School in 2023 is anticipated to be more than Central Middle School, which is almost double the size. So,
Johnny, I would just add, when we projected in 2019, we did build in an escalation factor of, I think, between 3 and 5% over that 10-year period, I believe it was. And so that's built into those numbers, and then it took off from there.
correct. And escalation is also built in our 2023 numbers as well.
Okay, thank you.
Johnny, to that point, if you may notice, the 19 value for Central versus the current, we're about to go out to bid on Central, and that kind of mirrors that 30-ish percent, 35% that we saw in the chart. The other numbers, we had to project them further forward into the future from now, and we're using more impactful escalation numbers than we were using in 2019, to Mark's point. So it's principally an escalation driven because we're staying true to the ed spec that was developed and the buildings were predicated upon. The design is still tied to those specifications.
Which is why the increase then between Woodland and Amberley, such a dramatic difference.
That's more time into the future from today.
Well, there's more time, and it's a
Yes.
bigger building, too.
Okay.
I want to underscore, I forget how you worded it, but kind of be aware that we may have to make future other changes in the schedule or other changes to the project down the road. And that might swing both ways. I mean, you know, maybe these numbers are going to be a little higher than these, or maybe they're going to be a little lower,
That would be hopeful.
right?
Yes.
Right, so, because we're looking out a number of years, and so just for us all to be flexible but it's for sure that we'll need to go back and ask for more borrowing. We're not exactly sure what that amount will be.
That's correct. That gap will be to be determined, but if you were looking at it today versus 25 or 26, the numbers could change slightly.
Johnny, refresh my memory. What's the plan for community high?
So we're still looking at the scope of community high in its entirety. At one point, we were looking at particularly building a smaller community high without the same structures of our middle schools and our elementary schools. What we're saying for our elementary schools, that we could build them to last another half century, and maybe a community high could be built to last us another 30-plus years-ish. Or if there were other opportunities for community high of a renovation of some sort, all of those are kind of in play. But no definite direction has been set for community high other than an allocation at this point.
So that could be a flexible number as well.
Absolutely, it could be, depending on what direction we determine to be the best for community high.
Okay, thanks.
With moving Curious Kids into Woodland, and it sounds like that was a major portion in moving that ahead on the timeline. You said lowered student capacity for community high. Would that potentially move community high students? Are they still in modulars? Would that move them into the actual building, or is it better that they stay where they are?
So they're not in modulars.
Okay.
That building is kind of sits on an L shape, and I consider it to kind of run north and south facing the high school, as well as east and west along Millam. So the high school students are in that northernmost portion of the building. That's where all of the students are there. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that building, you know, when we invested some funds in that during the last bond issue, it was merely to preserve it for another 5 to 10 years at that time, and knowing that that building is the oldest and in the worst condition of all of them. So by vacating Curious Kids from there, we've at least minimized the use that building gets, and allows us to meet our goal of eventually vacating that building.
To your point, Johnny, last week on Election Day around the state, there were a number of elections districts had to hold to recoup funds that they need to finish their bond project. So this isn't anything unique to Portage. So, yeah, it's happening at the CTE Center here that Kay Reese is building. So, yeah, every school district is in this boat if they passed the bond a couple of years ago. So it's not unique to Portage. And, you know, everybody should know that the board is committed to delivering on our promise to build 5 new elementary schools and remodel Moore's Bridge. We're not going to shy away from that, and we're just in an unfortunate spot, and hopefully we can take this forward without putting an undue burden on our taxpayers. That certainly is the plan. So sure appreciate the update, Johnny. All good information. Thank you.
Yes.
One last quick comment. I just want to acknowledge that there are probably people in the Amberley community who are disappointed, and just the need for additional communication there. And I think you've done a great job tonight, but just making sure that people really understand how fitting all of these pieces together.
We will meet with the Amberley staff tomorrow morning, and the district is working on a press release as well to kind of summarize the information that was shared tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Under this part of the report, we have our field trip request to Spain, and Dr. Pasco, are you presenting this one?
All right, good evening, Superintendent Beelang and trustees. So we have Jan Mazie here today from Portage Central. They are planning a field trip to Spain, summer 2024. We're from Madrid to Barcelona. It sounds pretty exciting. I don't want to steal her thunder, so Jan, why don't you come up and inform the board on the big plans for next summer? Thanks for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone, and I think you have the itinerary for the wonderful trip. This, I think, would be my 8th trip that I've led or co-led, so I am experienced with student travel. It kind of makes me laugh a little to call it a field trip, because yeah, we're going on a field trip, but an extended one. I can't express enough that it is such a valuable experience for our students, especially in correlation with our IB program, as well as World Strides does give the students an opportunity to earn 3 college credits. So traveling to Europe is not cheap, but that's a little bit of an added bonus, I feel. And that's one reason why we have stayed with World Strides at PC, and now I think Portage Northern is also using this company because they are quality and they deliver. Their main concern is safety. They offer a pretty, decent package, and so I really have no complaints and had an easy time picking this company. It's really important, and there are many other companies out there, but World Strides continues to be one of the tops. If you have any questions about the trip, I'd like to.
Is this the one that was formerly Peru?
No, that was Portage Northern, I believe. This is a trip from about pre-pandemic. Yeah, we all got a little delayed. People are very eager to travel, of course. So this is really a great opportunity.
I just want to say thank you for doing this. I always say this when they come for these trips, but these are potentially life-changing experiences for kids. And so thank you for initiating it and providing that opportunity for our students.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because that is so true. I have seen it time and time again, because at some point during the trip, I asked myself, and I'm doing this because, but that is what got me, spurred my love for Spanish when I was able to travel. And I just want to have other students have the opportunity. Any other comments or questions?
We just appreciate you making this opportunity available for our students. Appreciate it very much.
Okay, well.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Anything else?
You said they get credits for this?
They can earn 3 college credits, which
That's amazing.
it is amazing, because that can really put them ahead in the scheduling and picking their dorm process. So I really try to emphasize that to the parents, because, it's a lot of money, but it is partially an investment. So it isn't just fun. It is fun, but yeah, that is, and it's a prestigious university too, so good on anybody's transcript or resume. They do have to do the work, however. Sometimes they think they're just gonna get that 3 credits for going on the trip, and I'm like, no, it's college, you have to do some work. But I think that's great, so. Any other? Everybody always wants to chaperone too, so. Got a lot of volunteers for that. But that number will depend on how many students sign up, and we always do 1 chaperone per 6 students. That's pretty standard.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for
All
being
right.
here this evening.
Hasta luego.
So we have, as I indicated in my communication to you, we have a few other things that we want to update you on. And the first of those, if you remember when Michelle presented the communications audit, one of the recommendations and things we've been working on is our whole website. And so I thought it'd be important for Michelle to update you on where we are with with our move to Apogee?
As usual, Mark steals the thunder. No.
Trying to keep it as short as
Good evening, trustees. Yeah, so since I was last before you, we did, we've actually really dove into the audit and have created some timelines and priorities and taking all those recommendations and really putting a plan together. And the thing that did rise to the top was not only the website, but also our communications. And so this will also fit in really well with our crisis communications and our crisis plans as well. So we landed with an organization called Apogee, and as the title would tell you, there is an app involved, which is really exciting. So Apogee is really, so we looked at this company several years ago, and they were just kind of emerging as a new company, and they've since evolved into really the leading website and communication provider for a lot of school districts around the country. So it will be a website, also tied to the app. And what's a little bit different and what makes it such a powerful communication tool is that the app is kind of driving the website instead of the website being there and having this separate app. So they integrate really well. So this is, I want to show you, I'll just have to step over here because, we have some links. It's not being nice. So I just want to show you real quick. The information on here is not our information. This is kind of a demo, but I wanted to show you what it's looked like. So you'll be able to go to your app store, whether it's Apple or Google, and download the app here on your phone. And you'll be able to actually, we'll have a news feed, we'll have upcoming events. You'll actually be able to go to, parents will be able to select their particular school as like a priority school, so those will pop up first. They won't have to scroll through the entire district menu and everything though. And one of the really exciting parts about this is whatever language the person's phone is set to is the language that this app will appear. So that's a huge step forward for us in terms of equity. Because one of the things we heard when we did the focus groups with our English, non-English speaking parents is that they were relying on their students to translate for them. And as you can imagine, sometimes that's a little problematic. And so, so this will really increase the access for many of our families in the district. You'll also be able to, so you'll be able to see all the schools. Like I said, this is not our current one. This is just a demo. There'll be a full menu where you can actually access all of the things that are on the website as well. So you'll really be able to get to anything that is always on our website in a real mobile-friendly way. Because let's face it, we know we have plenty of families that do not have a laptop or a desktop. This is what they're relying on. And I can't tell you how many times we get phone calls of people saying, well, I'm trying to register on my phone, you know, and it makes it really difficult. So this should make things a lot easier. And it, like I said, it'll all tie into the website. Okay, so I don't know which one I'm using here. So then on the back side of it, on the administration side, we'll use something called Thrill Share. And this is what really makes this powerful, because one of the things we also heard in the audit was how, you know, we really needed to modernize and speed up the way we can communicate with our parents, particularly if there's an emergency of some sort, if there's a lockup, if there's something that, you know, the kids are beating us to the communication punch. And so this will really allow, this will also sit on the phones. I already have this installed on my phone. And from there, we will be able to update all of these different communications channels in one fell swoop. So if people have the app, we'll be able to update, you know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the ones that, you know, the different schools, and each school will be able to do this as well within their own school community. There will be a live feed that will be on the website. Think about that as kind of an individual school's social media in a way. We'll be able to push notifications, so we'll actually be able to send an alert to people's phones if they're signed up for the app. And we'll still be able to do the text messages and robocalls or voice calls directly to people. So if they happen to not have downloaded the app, they will still get the information. But from an ease of use standpoint, if, you know, something's going down and I don't happen to be near my computer, or Kayla doesn't happen to be near her computer, we're off doing something, we always have our phones with us, we'll always be able to communicate with our families. And from the administrative side, we will also be able to do that, kind of pick and choose, so we'll be able to do the whole district, we'll also be able to do any given school or combination of schools. And each building will have the ability to communicate with their own families as well. Right now, we're starting out with the principals, but as time goes on, we'll be able to train perhaps secretaries or other people that they designate, and they will be able to implement like an approval process. So somebody else can post it, they can take a look, hit approve, and it'll go. So there's some kind of security things built in there as well, which is very exciting. This one. So I just want to show you what the websites are going to look like. This is, again, these are prototypes. This isn't our real information yet, but we're working on it. So it'll be a lot of really nice images. So what we're doing is instead of kind of just having what we've been calling the building mugshots on each school, we'll be able to have some really engaging photos of children learning and participating and being really engaged in school, which is really a nice marketing tool. This one's just scrolling the same photo, but we could have several different ones. Kayla's been going around to the different schools and getting a lot of really nice photographs, so that we'll be able to use, and then we'll be able to keep those up and rotate them out maybe quarterly or twice a year, just to keep things fresh and to make sure we don't have any students on our website that have, that are in 5th grade and are now like in college, that kind of a thing. So just a little bit, you can see there's the live feed I was telling you about. So various people along the side here is almost like a little internal Twitter feed of sorts. And then we can also have different news. So think of upcoming events. We can add pictures, telling those really good stories about Portage Public Schools. And again, those could be shared on Facebook, on Instagram, on the news feed of so it really starts to make our websites a lot more dynamic and engaging, so that when we do have people visit, because we know that, the building websites for the most part are places where new people look. They want to see what are these schools like. So we want to put a really good foot forward on those as well, but it'll also engage our parents more. But again, this will be similar to the things that are on the app. So if you can't visit the website, you'll get the same information on the app. And again, upcoming events, and then linking to all the other things. So that's just kind of a quick presentation. We will be working on this over the summer. We're planning to launch in mid-July, so we're ready to go for the new school year. And along with that will become a complete marketing campaign for parents on downloading the app and how to use it and that kind of stuff. We're also we'll be getting to train our principals and staff as well. And we're putting together a whole brochure that we'll share with staff at the opening day event next year about how the new way the district will be communicating. So we're really excited about it. It's a big project, but I think it's gonna, again, take our communications to a whole new level and really solve several different issues all at once. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Michelle, will individual buildings be responsible for updating the content of their particular page?
Yeah, so right now we have building webmasters.
Okay.
And we're gonna shift that to more of except the high schools are a little bit different because they kind of take care of they've got so much more information and they've got kind of really more designated people. But at the other buildings, we're going to shift that webmaster responsibility, which we've kind of assumed in many cases already, and really ask for content contributors. So we will, because this, again, will be so really simple to use, the principals will kind of be responsible for identifying somebody that we can work with to keep that content fresh. And like I said, for the news feed, you could identify 2 or 3 or however many people you want to contribute to that with an approval. So there's a lot of opportunity. We're going to start slow, make sure people adjust to the change and understand what's happening, but it really has a lot of potential to really, like I said, get the story out there. I could see the coaches using this. you know, if they're the Tiger Trek, you know, kind of in real time, right? Like they could be posting it right as we go in that live feed portion. So that's what's really exciting about that. But then, like I said, it also gives us the ability to communicate in real time when there are some really, you know, things going on that we want to make sure people are hearing from us first, you know, and helping us control that flow of information. So this will be very helpful.
I'm just a little concerned that, like, now, if you look at some of them, there's nothing there.
Right.
So if everybody is energized and motivated to do it, great, but if they're not, then what?
Well, then we can do it too. I mean, we do have the ability. Kayla and I will be able to post on any building. And so there will be some things that we will feed to those as well. So those district-wide things, we can contribute as well to keep that active. But I think once we get folks seeing how this is, there's usually always somebody at schools who's really, we're trying to talk to, like, who's your person who just loves to do this kind of stuff, right? And so there's a little stipend that goes with that, so that helps too.
Will this replace, is it called Peach Jar?
No, so Peach Jar will integrate with, so Peach Jar is simply just for organizations to get their, you know, their programs out to people. So the way Peach Jar works right now is the different organizations, let's say the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, they actually go directly to the Peach Jar site. And then they can select, they can upload their folder or their flyer, and they can select any schools that use Peach Jar. So Kalamazoo uses it, we use it, a couple other districts around the area. So they can kind of pick, you know, there's a check mark for each school they want to send their flyer to. Then that comes to the different schools. So I get, my department, we get the Peach Jar, you know, somebody's uploaded a Peach Jar flyer. They pay for it directly to Peach Jar. They upload the flyer, we approve it, make sure it's meeting our, you know, our standards and our requirements, and then it goes directly to families. So we'll continue to use that. During COVID, Peach Jar was actually, typically there's a per student fee that you pay up front for that service, the districts do, and then the different organizations pay for it. During COVID, they all had a special going where we didn't pay for it. So we took advantage of that. And it's working really well. I think the organizations, like I said, it's typically the cost for the organizations that are uploading the flyer is much less than if they had to print all those and distribute them, and, you know, which we don't do anyway. So, you know, it's much more effective way of getting information out. And most of the organizations we work with really appreciate it.
With the integration with Peach Jar, do those flyers also get translated?
No, because those come right from Peach Jar. So yeah, that's still a little bit different. I don't know if Peach Jar has a translation piece of it or not. So that is one thing that, but again, those Peach Jar flyers are from typically outside organizations that, you know, would normally come to a school and say, hey, can I pass, you know, can you send this flyer home in everybody's backpack? I was like, please no. You know, our teachers love it. So, and so, but it still gets the information out because a lot of them are very valuable programs, you know, and we want people to know about them. And so this is a great way to get that information out.
And this is separate from Skyward?
So the information, the database, the parents, like if you're doing a robocall or, you know, and we can actually still do old-fashioned email too, like gets pulled, the information gets pulled from Skyward. So this integrates with Skyward because that's where the database will come from. But this is, you know, a separate thing. But that's where, you know, we're going to say we want to email all parents at Amberley. That's where that information is going to come from.
Yeah, but if parents want to check on assignments?
Oh, no, they'll still do that. That'll still be,
Okay.
that's still, yeah, they'll still have to log on to Skyward for that because that's the student database system. So that's not, this is strictly communication. Any other questions? All right, well, look for brand new, spiffy, fun stuff coming up soon.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for all your
Will
work.
community members be able to log on for schools in their area? Is it only
I mean, you should be able, I mean, anybody can download the app. So, you know, they wouldn't necessarily get like the direct, like the robocalls and that kind of stuff, because that pulls from the database. But if they're just looking for Facebook or, you know, they could still download the app and see kind of that. They could see the same thing that would be on the public website. So yeah.
Very good.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Michelle. Just a few other things I just want to kind of breeze through, just to give you an update. It's been a while since we've talked about McCamley Knight Field, that the board approved the name change on that. Just to let you know that we're still, we are working on signage. Johnny is working on the overhead sign with the architects and with the vendors to replace that sign. And then Eric Albertus is working with a vendor to create the 3 signs that will be inside the stadium, one for Bob Knight, one for McCamley, and another one that kind of explains the history of the field and its progression. So those are all in the works, and as soon as we have more to show you, we will on that one. Also want to mention April 28th was, it's been a while since we've met, so there's a lot of information that we're sharing with you this evening, but April 28th was Arbor Day. We had a joint venture with the city of Portage to plant a tree right outside here in Centennial Park. So if you're at the south end of Centennial Park, right in the center, there's a new white oak tree that's been planted there. We had a simple, nice ceremony on Arbor Day to acknowledge Arbor Day and the planting of that tree. I also want to mention Johnny and I had the opportunity to attend the Carnegie Foundation Summit last month, and we were invited to present a poster which is over there. I don't know if we need to really unroll that, but it's a 4x8 poster, and poster presentation is a big part of that conference. It gives our school districts that present, organizations that present, a chance to share their story about what they're proud of, what they're working on. And our story was really about our strategic commitments, how we got there, and showing some of the data on how we built on that. So it was very, it was a showcase of our school district and the good things that are happening here, and we garnered a lot of interest by being at the poster, and we had several different opportunities throughout the 3 days to be there, to engage with the other conference attendees, so it was very good. But one of the things that we learned while we were there is, well, there were 2 things that really came to light. The first is that the Carnegie Foundation is responsible for the creation of the Carnegie Unit, around which all of our secondary classes are credited, and Carnegie is looking at how they can change the Carnegie Unit into something else. They don't know yet what something else is, but obviously there's a strong connection between the Carnegie Unit and how universities and colleges take a look at credit earned. So that's a big task that they're undertaking, but I think they see that maybe there are other ways to assess student acquisition of knowledge and skills. So they're looking at that. And then they just announced at the conference too a new partnership that they've created with ETS, which is Educational Testing Services. It's the primary testing agency for test development in the United States. And they're looking at measuring those skills that are difficult to measure. So they align perfectly with our learning and leadership skills that are in our end statement, as well as our resilience and life skills that we have listed in our end. So I'm really looking forward to how that work unfolds, because it could give us some ways to present some, not only data to the board and the community, but also finding ways to creatively assess student acquisition of those soft skills, those 21st century skills, and as we call them. So that's work that's on the horizon. And then lastly, I just want to acknowledge that this is a really busy time of the year for everyone. A lot of time that's spent on recognizing students and their accomplishments. I've kind of coordinated this with Randy, so I'm not doing all of them, but 2 events that have happened since our last board meeting was an awards program that it's called Excellence in Education. And that program recognizes the top 2% of students in Kalamazoo County, and we had several students that were recognized during that program. Our featured speaker was Dr. Edward Montgomery from Western Michigan University, and it was nice to see our students getting recognized there. And the second event, and I know some of you were in attendance of that, and gives me a chance to thank the Portage Education Foundation for hosting and sponsoring the Spotlight Awards Dinner. That was held on April 20th at the Kalamazoo Country Club, and that recognizes our retirees, retiring educators from this year, as well as featuring three of our past retirees who are recognized for what they contributed to the district over the years they were employed here. So a couple of very nice events in addition to the ones that Randy and maybe some of you that have been going to some of these events want to mention during the board portion of the meeting. So that's all I have there. We got through that in 10 minutes, right?
Right.
Hour and 10 minutes. So our board education piece, and sorry to keep you waiting, folks. We just didn't know how long this first portion of the meeting was, but under board education, we want to give you an update about what's happening in the world of career and technical education and early middle college. And we have representatives from Risa that are here. Cam, are you going to do the introductions, or is everyone doing this together?
Everybody will do their own, but yeah.
Okay, so are you first?
Paige is actually first.
Paige Daniels, Cameron Buck, and Lisa Bartel are here to present to you. So, Paige, it's all yours. Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you so much, and good evening. I'm super excited to be here tonight and just share some updates and a bit about what we're up to. So first, I really just want to take the opportunity to kind of share the overview of what we call our Career Connect continuum, because in the world of career and technical education, what we've really been all about over these past few years is thinking about what it means to create a world-class system of career learning that starts in kindergarten and goes beyond high school. And so what you're seeing here is just an overview of kind of how we've structured that work in 3 lanes. And so the first lane is called the Discover lane, which is the lane that I have the privilege of overseeing. And so in this lane, we're really focusing on career awareness and exploration and work-based learning. And we do that both in partnership with our local school districts, as well as through that third thing you're seeing there, through Youth Opportunities Unlimited, we do that same type of work through some out-of-school time programming. And so really think, how are we helping young people understand what's possible in the world of work, what they're interested in, where they have skills and passions, and then getting a chance to practice that on the job. And so that work-based learning umbrella really encompasses all things like internships, apprenticeships, industry tours, job shadows. That middle lane, the Ignite lane, is the lane that Cameron oversees. And so that's where we really get into high school course opportunities. And so that's where the career and technical education courses come into play. And obviously we want to do a good job in those younger years to help young people who might be interested in taking advantage of these opportunities know that they're interested in taking advantage of these opportunities. So we've got CTE courses, we have early middle college, which Lisa Bartel leads, and you're going to hear more about here in just a couple minutes, and then our education for the arts programming. And then that third lane, our launch lane, is really in support of the other two through community and industry engagement, events and experiences, and fund development, which really is necessary at all levels of the continuum. What you're seeing here, and we're not going to get into the weeds of this chart, but we just wanted to give you a sense of how we think about career learning across that entire continuum. And there's really 4 buckets that you're seeing in the columns represented here. These are our metrics that we've identified this year as aspirational targets for the scale and scope of our work. And so the buckets where we're really focused across the entire continuum are how are we supporting young people in their self-awareness, their option awareness, skill development, and career pathway planning. And so what I just want to take a couple more minutes to do is highlight a few of those areas that we're focused on through that Discover lane. So how we're helping young people with career awareness and exploration and work-based learning. Zello, as you may or may not be super familiar with, is our online platform for career engagement. It was formerly a similar platform, was Career Cruising. We have now shifted which is now shifted to Zello, and that is available across the county. And what you're seeing here is just kind of a snapshot. Zello really offers students the opportunity to engage in some of those interest inventories and self-assessments to understand their skills and their interests and how those align, and then what's possible in the world of work. But it also allows for engagement in activities related to a variety of careers. And so we've been about the business of looking at how Zello can really be a tool for what the EDP process can start to look like. And so what you're seeing here is an example. At the top is just an overview of where Portage Public Schools is with Zello usage. But then that bar graph in the bottom is an example of an activity that was done recently, just last month, in partnership with the Portage Middle Schools. When 8th graders were taking their assessment, we partnered to support an EDP engagement activity through Zello for 6th and 7th graders. And so you're seeing in those bars how many completed the activity, how many are in progress and they still have the opportunity to complete, and then how many were not yet able to start that. This is a new project that is being implemented in partnership with Portage Elementary Schools. Through their morning meetings, they have a slide deck that's used, and we're partnering to infuse a career slide once a week. And so really just looking at opportunities for plugging in that career awareness and exploration in things that already exist. So our team, on our career awareness and exploration team, is working in partnership to develop these slides and support that work in collaboration with the school counselors and teachers. And then what you're seeing here is just an overview of some highlights related to work-based learning. And so this year we have been piloting a Career Connections course. This is currently targeting alternative programs. So we've been in great collaboration with Portage Community High. And the course is intended to really be twofold. To start out the year, the first half of the year, with employment skills, 21st century skills learning, as well as what are the types of things you might be interested in doing an internship in. And then those who are ready have the opportunity to engage in an internship as part of their schedule during that second half of the year. We also infuse one-on-one career coaching opportunities, especially for those who may not be ready or it may not work for them at that time, to get them ready for the time when they will be able to step into the world of work. So you're just seeing kind of some of the highlights and numbers. Phase 2 of that will include, we're in partnership with the Consumers Math course at Portage Community High to really begin to scale some of that work. And then you're also seeing work-based learning tied to the CTE courses, which is an area that has existed for years and one that we want to continue to scale as we work toward the career campus being in existence. So we've been in recovery from COVID and bouncing back from virtual focus to much more in person, so you're kind of seeing that growth. We're super excited that the outreach and recruiting for next year's work-based learning students, and I should say with regard to CTE work-based learning, I'm talking about students who have the opportunity to have work-based learning on their schedule and are leaving for a part of the day to engage in an internship type experience related to their CTE course of study. And so super excited that we haven't even started the direct recruiting that we'll be doing mid-month this month, but we already have 9 Portage students who have applied just through word of mouth. And on that note, gosh, I almost forgot about the coming soon. We are currently in the build-out phase for a mobile lab, which will be launched next school year. This mobile lab will have modular units inside. This is not the exact one. This is just a mock-up of what we hope it will look like. It will have modular hands-on career learning experiences to give that we can bring right to the students. So we will offer schools the opportunity to sign up. We will partner with teachers to provide curriculum for what they can do to get ready for when they're going to be on the mobile lab, and also experiences that they can engage with afterwards, both in the classroom and at home with their families. We are starting with manufacturing, but intend to expand the modules that can be brought onto the lab over the coming years, at first in alignment with the programs that will be offered through the Career Connect campus and beyond. And so just excited about this to be a really unique way, especially for elementary and middle school students, to get even more of that hands-on experience brought right to them. And then I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to talk about early middle college.
Thank you, Paige. Good evening. So I have the pleasure of coordinating the EMC program here in our county and working with your students that are participating in that program. I'm going to talk just a little bit about what the program is about to give you a little information and then give a little bit of stats on Portage students' involvement in the program. So EMC has been around about 8 years, so it is a newer program, but we're kind of getting our feet under us now. And it's a program that extends the high school experience from 4 to 5 years. But when a student completes the program, they can earn up to an associate's degree or a certificate with our partner KVCC while they're earning that high school diploma. So we kind of stretch the high school requirements out, but embed college courses and a college credential into their outcomes. It's a focused program of study, so students that are doing early middle college are choosing a program, a path that they want to receive a credential in. That's what makes it a bit different than traditional dual enrollment, where a student might just take a class or two at the college to have that experience, but aren't necessarily looking to do a program and earn a credential like we would through EMC. There's a lot of support services that come with this program. What I think is one of the main supports is we have a mentor program. So for every student that's in EMC, when they start their coursework all the way through completion, they're working with a mentor that they meet with every couple of weeks, check in, serves as a coach, a cheerleader, just kind of helps them with their questions throughout the program as they're learning the college world, and the differences between high school and college. And the tuition and the fees for the courses are paid for through Portage schools, up to an allocated amount through, the foundation allowance that's coming from the state. Reasons students and families might want to consider this program. I think there are a lot of students that can benefit from transitioning from high school to college in kind of a more gradual way, and with that support system around them. I think for some students, ending high school, in May or June and going full-time to college a couple months later can be a big jump, and they can feel like maybe they're not ready for that jump, or can I do this? And so by doing it in a more gradual way, with starting with a few classes and kind of working up, having that support system around them, that we found that to be really successful for students really utilize those supports. It does allow them to finish that first college credential and start their career path a little bit earlier because they are embedding that college into their high school experience. There's some great financial benefits, of course, to the program that helps reduce, the burden on the families. We have built the programming through EMC to be a pipeline to careers here in our community. So, with the new Career Center coming in a few years, we are looking at that, looking at the EMC offerings and making sure that those things are in alignment and that we're helping to, again, fill the jobs here in our community and keep our great talent here in the area. And we've also found that this can be, for some students, having this in this college educational environment can be another place for them to find their community. Some students are struggling maybe to do that in other settings, and we do find that some students really enjoy being at KVCC and on the campus and are finding some community through that option. We talk about this as a 5-year program. This is kind of what it means. Really, 9th grade is a year of application for EMC. So we are encouraging Portage to be letting families know about this opportunity in middle school, so that as they're moving into high school, their counselor's aware they have this interest. They can build it into some of the scheduling process to allow them to engage in EMC. So applying in the spring of 9th grade, or that January to March period. In 10th grade, they take a course in your high schools called College Success Strategies. That's meant to be a preparatory course that helps them have some basic college knowledge, some how to study, some time management, some things like that to help them before they start their first college coursework. Most of our students start their college courses in the junior year, and they may also start a CTE or EFA course as well as part of their EMC program, depending on which program that they're interested in. They take a couple classes a semester. Junior year, they're going to take more college, less high school. 12th grade year, some of our students are even full-time on campus in 12th grade, just depending on if they've met certain high school requirements that need to be taken in those buildings. And in that final 13th grade year, regardless of program or outcomes, all students are full-time on the college campus. So they very much feel like a college student, but they are still a Portage Public Schools student with the supports and resources that come along with that. These are the various ways to be a completer of early middle college. There's lots of different students with different goals. So we want to look at, how to meet the needs of those various students. We certainly have the associate degree options for students who are looking to transfer to university. They may do the Associates of Arts or Science. For students who are looking to go into the workforce after the associate's degree, that would be the applied science. Those are what we call our go-to-work degrees. For students who are getting more skill-based courses and heading right in to the workforce afterwards. We also have 60 transferable credits as an outcome, certificates, and certificate of achievements from KVCC. These again are very skill-focused for students to learn a particular thing and be able to go out and use it right away. There's a MEMCA certification. This was developed by the Michigan Early Middle College Association. These are students that have taken at least 15 college credits or more and have done like a career and college readiness experiences. They have to do so many hours of things related to their field, whether that's an internship or a job shadow or those sorts of things. And then newly added a few years ago as a completion is also students heading into apprenticeships. So if they start them during their EMC time or are going into an apprenticeship after they complete EMC, that is also considered a completion of our program. So, as of this year, actually this Thursday is our completion ceremony for 22-23. And we're excited, of course, to round out another year celebrating all these students. The students in Portage have earned almost 700 college credits through the EMC programming. We have 7 associate's degree completers, 3 60-plus credits, so very close. An associate's degree is 62 or more, so this is like one class shy of a degree that they might be finishing up in the summer or after the program. And then we also have a certificate completer in our welding program, and that ends with a certificate. So some of these programs do not have an associate's degree because you don't need it to go into the workforce, which is also why it's important to have those other credentialing options as well. So excited about the students who have chosen this option and really hoping to get the word out and have other students who this would be a good fit for, to help support them in this option as well. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Cameron.
Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about our current structure of our high school career and technical education courses, the current model we're in, and then also a little bit more about building projects. Since you didn't get your fill of that yet, we'll talk about our building project and some of the same things. We saw Doug Phillips here. He's also the owner's rep for KRESA on that project, so we have a lot of the same similar conversations with our board. Right, Randy?
Correct.
So what you see here, this is a course plan of the career and technical education courses that will be housed in the new building called the Career Connect Campus. I know you can't really read those that great. The intent here was just to talk about the process of how we got to what we're going to offer in the center. And we used a couple research partners. We're extremely blessed to have the Upjohn Institute for Employment Research in Kalamazoo. We also partnered with the University of Michigan. They have a department called the Youth Policy Lab that has some expertise in local labor market data. And we partnered with those two organizations essentially to come up with a filter for decision making that says, we want to make sure that programs that are offered at the new campus lead to jobs that are in high demand, are well-paying, and that have enough annual openings every year in our local labor market that we know that there's going to be opportunities for students. We might look at an occupation that has a 25% projected increase over the next 5 years, but that 25% might be 7 jobs or 15 jobs. And we know that we're going to have roughly 48 students a year going through these. So all of that data to say, here are the programs that have met that criteria. So they're all projected growth of at least 8%, at least 300 annual openings over the next 5 years in the Kalamazoo Portage area. And then also, we define well-paying as a median wage of $20 an hour for a single wage earner. The other filter for this was that these jobs required less than a bachelor's degree for entry. We know the path for our students goes many different ways, but the filter was requires less than a bachelor's for entry. So we have courses that will be housed at the youth center. Our current model is decentralized consortium model. We have programs in over 20 different locations in the county right now. All the high schools, the Air Zoo, KVCC, Epic Center downtown. We will continue to have a few satellite locations when the center's open, where it makes sense. Aviation's at the Air Zoo. We can't really replicate that, nor should we. If you're an aviation student and you're in the Air Zoo, there's no better place than you want to be. So we're going to keep that partnership. Things like cosmetology, our law and public safety is going to stay in KVCC because they have a great partnership with the Academy and Cadet program there, and our students get to work close hand in hand, so they'll stay there. And then there's also courses that will remain in the local districts, mainly business management, finance and marketing, because all of your high schools have those. To centralize them would reduce the amount of students we have in those programs in the county, so those will remain in the local districts. Speaking of that, the programs that, the Career Tech Ed programs that are currently housed in Portage buildings, Portage Central has accounting, finance, marketing, and web design, and I put rotation because depending on scheduling and things like that, one year they may have web design, maybe not the next year, or semester-based. Portage Northern has accounting, finance, marketing, business management, web design, and engineering and wood technology as well. The only one of those programs that we would call a county-wide program, meaning that it's open for students from other districts, is the engineering and wood technology at Portage Northern. The other ones are for students that are just in those buildings. So when we talk about county-wide programming, the ones that are not business, finance, and marketing, we have programs that are open to students in all of the county. Our current enrollment for next year is just over 1,000 students. We'll have 1,000 students in high school career tech ed programs across the county. That represents just over 20% of all 11th and 12th graders in the county. We have about 4,892 11th and 12th graders, according to my school data right now, in the county. And that's who we say is essentially eligible for career tech ed programs. We set no eligibility requirements for CTE programs. I know that comes up sometimes of, well, you have to have this attendance or you have to have this academic credit. KRESA does not set any sort of eligibility for enrollment into career tech ed. High school counselors place students from their districts into the programs. So the decision-making process for all students who enroll is through an application and then a selection process at each individual building by the high school counselors. So just a quick breakdown of how many students each of the Portage buildings has enrolled in those countywide programs next year. Portage Central, you can see, has 122. Portage Community has 14. Portage Northern has 93. The percentage behind those numbers, so Portage Central, 122 students out of 1,008. They make up roughly 12.1% of our total countywide enrollment. And then the number below that for Portage Central, 17.2%, that is how many 122 students represents 17.2% of the 11th and 12th graders in Portage Central. Portage Central, I think the number is 709 11th and 12th graders. Portage Northern was slightly lower, 605, something like that. So you can see of the students that are enrolled in those countywide programs, how many, what percentage of that population in the school building that is. So that's a glimpse at our current enrollment. The fun thing now, get to talk about new building. We're excited to be able to bring those programs under one roof, centralized. We have a very complicated transportation system that students spend a lot of time on buses, almost as much time on a bus as they are in class. And then also to bring in counselors, special population, special education consultants, instructional coaches under one roof, because right now the teachers in these programs work for all the different districts and not KRESA, so bringing them into one roof with those supports is exciting for us. So just a couple pictures, and the last thing I have is just a quick fly through so you can see one of the things that Johnny and that team talked about earlier. Through the design process, we had 4 days of design charrettes, and one of the things we heard from students through that process is they didn't want this building to feel like a school building. So I think I heard somebody talk about the hallways and the corridors. You'll see that in the pictures here that the students said wide open. Collaboration spaces, the spaces you're looking at here is called the Innovation Commons or the Collaboration Commons, and intentionally designed for student collisions. Most all of the building, all the classrooms are glass. We want to make sure that if you're a student that's walking down to construction trades, you have to pass culinary arts, ag science, vet science, horticulture, so you get exposed to those just through that. One of the things that we're also doing for collaboration is teachers don't have assigned classrooms. They have a lab space. There are classrooms mixed throughout the building that they can go to depending on if they want a collaborative lesson, more of a lecture lesson. And then also all teacher offices and spaces are in one central location. So we're mixing up that collaboration and hoping for that cross-program collaboration. Another view from the main entrance at that common space and the learning stairs there. A lot of feedback we got was bringing nature inside the building, so you can see we went with mass timber construction, so the feel of the wood tones in there. Beautiful picture of all of our superintendents in the county at the time the picture was taken, the groundbreaking. If you've driven by I-94 and Sprinkle Road, you can see that there's actually concrete down. There's blocks being laid down around the footings for the building. And can you click on that picture, actually? There should be a link to a quick fly-through.
Listen, there's a good chance somebody's trying to hack.
World, and happy to answer any questions.
I'm so excited about this.
So are we.
Not so much a question as just, I want to chime in if you don't mind. For those listening here and online, my daughter graduated from the EMC program, and it is which is why I've been grinning during the whole presentation. It is one of the best things that could have happened for her, and I recommend it to all families. She graduated as a machinist. She gave me permission to share this, that she struggled during her freshman year of high school. And as she entered the EMC program, every class that she took related to the EMC program bettered how she did at high school here at Portage. Her grades went up every year with the EMC program. She graduated with highest honors from KVCC. And that is enormous. She finished her 5th year this past June, so a year ago. She graduated. She had more honor cards when she walked from KVCC than she could believe. She was beyond thrilled. She immediately, or almost immediately, got a job as a machinist, bringing home more than I do. And I have a master's degree. For someone to finish high school and start a job with that kind of success, there needs to be, in my opinion, more families taking advantage of this program. It does not preclude college. She is working as a machinist while attending Western full-time, dual majoring in engineering. When you think about an engineer who will have experience on the floor, that is enormous. And she's going to graduate college with money in the bank. Forget debts, she's going to graduate with money in the bank. And I highly, highly recommend that all middle school families look into this program for their child to see if this works. We have wonderful programs here at Portage, IB, CAMSI. This needs to be one of those programs that is taught about just as much as the other programs because it has so many benefits for the children. You mentioned the mentor. That mentor meets every other week with the students, teaches them how to do college in a way that they don't listen to parents very much. And how many students graduate from a high school, and I hear this from parents frequently, yeah, their first semester, yeah, that didn't go so well because they didn't know how to do college. She didn't have that transition because she had that mentor encouraging her along the way. And I just can't say enough high things about this. It is fantastic, and more people should do it. My current freshman has been accepted also. She is looking forward to it. She is super excited to have been accepted to KVCC, to have gotten her college acceptance letter in 9th grade. To her, that is a boost that is beyond value for her to have received that. So thank you so much for that. I have wanted Portage to do more than 11 students. That is one thing that I want to see more students participating.
And more than, that's just the amount of completers.
Yeah, through this year.
Yeah.
One of those is mine. I'd like to see more.
No questions, only because of the hour. So cool.
Thank you.
So cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're glad to come back and do updates whenever needed.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening?
Oh, darn
Thank you. Are there any comments by board trustees this evening?
I have just one. I wanted to say, I know it's Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week, and so I want to thank all of our teachers in Portage. I have 2 kids that go to Angling Road Elementary. They have the best teachers. They're actually excited to go to school because they love their teachers. My kindergartner, his teacher showed up to Chuck E. Cheese for one of the birthday parties for one of his classmates on Saturday, and the kids were so excited. So I just think that Portage public school teachers go way above and beyond. I want to say thank you.
For sure, thank you.
I'll piggyback on that. I was one of the people who nominated a teacher for the Spotlight Awards, and she was my children's actually 2nd grade teacher at Angling Road, a person that did unbelievable things in the classroom. She was so honored to be recognized and said, there have to be people who are more worthy of this than me. She just couldn't imagine that after being retired for 12 years, someone would nominate her and she would be selected. So that was a really cool evening, and just want to promote what teachers who are still in the buildings are doing for our kids. I also had the opportunity to attend the Teachers in Service last Wednesday with Dr. Holly, who did his presentation as part of our diversity, equity, inclusion. I loved him. He was very dynamic, and he presented a lot of things that I think made a lot of sense, and that maybe I had myself some misconceptions about what was being addressed in these sessions. So it was really great. Had the opportunity to sit at lunch with some teachers from Amberley, and that was great too. And then attend the IB presentation at Portage Central yesterday, where 27 students were recognized for the IB diploma. That was fun too. Kids presented their significant educators, and there were kindergarten teachers there were fifth grade teachers there were, one girl had her dance teachers there, piano teachers, they all had great things to say about these adults that had been so impactful to them. So that was a very worthwhile afternoon. So thanks.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else?
Randy, I'll make a quick announcement. I'm assuming you're going to thank the voters. So
I was thinking we should.
I figured that would be on your list. My quick shout out goes to the good people at the Portage Central Mustang Athletic Club, the Sport Booster Club at Central. They had their inaugural first annual, Mustang Gallop 5K Saturday. I had not done a 5K in 20 years, and I'm walking slowly today still. But it was a great event, and it's a great group, and they did a great job with that.
Thanks for that, Paul.
Randy suggested I make comments. He emailed me this week asking, because I took part in some training with the MASB for their Spring Institute. I took 2 classes, which was 6 hours of training. And he let me know that it's customary to share something we found interesting from that experience. So I'm doing so. Thank you for letting me know that that's the custom. I had not been aware of that. One of the classes I took was Community Relations Leadership, and I found it fascinating in there. There was a strong recommendation as to what is the role of board members in communicating with the community. And the word was amplify. And he strongly recommended that those of us who are newly elected, of which we have 2, that we take our Facebook campaign pages and convert them to community communications to amplify things that we see happening in the district or with the board. And I was excited to hear that, because we are doing that to some extent. And we talked during the class about ways that we can do more with our Facebook page. So I'm looking forward to doing so. And I encourage other members who are here who might have a means of reaching out to do similarly with a means that works for them.
Thank you, Kimberly. What other class did you take?
I took basic school finance.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, we'd be remiss if we did not thank our Portage community for once again supporting renewal of the regional enhancement millage. This is the 7th time our community has renewed this since it was first introduced in 2005. And last week, that was by a margin of 63%. So we appreciate the community's support and their trust, and you can be guaranteed that those funds will be used for the benefit of student instruction. There's an invitation on at your place about the Northern IB celebration. If you can make it, it's really moving to see these students and the things they've accomplished and the things they attribute to their significant educator. It's really worthwhile to go there. Also, the K-RISA Outstanding Senior Awards Breakfast was held this past Friday. This was for CTE, EFE, and EMC and YOU students, and there were 22 graduates of Portage this year that received scholarships. There was a total of $130,000 in donations for scholarships. Also, those of you who missed the KCO KCSOA meeting last Wednesday. We heard a very dynamic presentation on economic development in the area from Dan Jakeway. Board member awards were presented, and our own Terry Novaria received the Award of Merit. Also want to remind everyone that groundbreaking ceremonies for Central and Haverhill Elementary Schools are scheduled for May 23rd at Central and Haverhill on June 5th, and ceremonies on both days begin at 2:15. Our next board meeting is preceded by our retreat on May 22nd. And right now, the agenda for that meeting is the issues raised at our last meeting that have since been processed by owner linkage and the policy committee. So it's a jam-packed agenda. We've got a lot of things to get through. If there's something else on your mind, let me know as soon as you can.
Is that at 4?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to our consent agenda on page 20. And this evening, we have on the consent agenda the April 10, 2023 regular business meeting and closed session meeting minutes. We also have the opportunity to authorize the purchase of a replacement server cluster from Dell Technologies in an amount not to exceed $194,289.05, the funds for which will be drawn from the 2021 bond fund, and also approve the renewal of Chartwell's food service management contract for the 23-24 school year, and also authorize the Director of Finance to execute the contract renewal agreement. Those last two items were discussed at our last meeting. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, then the consent agenda is approved as presented. And now we move on to district performance, and we've got to go all the way to page 62. And we start out with monitoring report 1.4. Is there a motion, please, on page 62?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 1.4, ends as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Bo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Pasco to give you a summary of what you have in the report that was provided for you in the agenda packet.
Nothing like saving a monitoring report to the end of the board meeting, but I'll do my best to go through the slides with some detail. Again, good evening, trustees and Superintendent Beelang. So tonight we're looking at monitoring report 1.4. Shows students have the knowledge and skills necessary to succeed at post-secondary institutions without remediation and have the employability skills necessary to obtain meaningful employment. So I'll cover some highlights as we typically do. I'm going through the slides tonight. You should all have monitoring report 1.4. You should also have the slide deck in front of you that I'll go through. Again, your report will provide further detail as it relates to the data and some explanation. I'll try and cover the main highlights. So in this report, we look at college enrollment, the time it takes our graduates to complete 24 post-secondary credits, how many of our students end up needing remedial college courses. We'll also look at our 4- and our 5-year graduation and dropout rate data, as well as how we measure up to our comparator districts. And then we'll look at some of the CTE, Career and Technical Education enrollment, as well as the ACT Work Keys data as it relates to career readiness. All right, the first set of data we'll look at is college enrollment on data sheet 1.41 or 1.4.1. All data for reference is pulled from My School Data. Thanks to Melissa O'Keefe in our office, our data specialist that helps us extract the data for these presentations. Here we look at our PPS graduates over the previous 3 years, as well as some of the state data. The top table shows the percent of PPS graduates that enrolled in a 4-year college, community college, or any type of college within 6 months of graduation. So we look specifically at the class of 2020, 2021, and 2022 in this data set here. So we can see that PPS dropped in the percent enrolled in any college type from the previous year, and so did the state, but we're still 20% or so above the state. 73% compared to 53%. In the middle of the data slide, we also look at the 3-year weighted average for the percent of students enrolled in any college type, and we see that 76% of our college graduates enrolled within 6 months, where the state showed an average of somewhere around 57%. So at the bottom left graph, we see that the percent of college enrollment continues to increase in any college type beyond that 6-month range, as you would expect. This shows that not all students decide to enter college the first fall post-high school graduation. So whether they take a year off, some may have some financial implications that they need to work out, and there may be some other life reasons as to why they don't enroll within that first fall. But the steady increase holds true for both 4-year colleges as well as community college enrollment. All right, the next slide on data sheet 1.4.2 in your report, it looks at the time it takes students to complete 24 college credits. So more specifically, we look at the percentage of students who earn 24 credits within 12 months. So that's set by the state as they determine 24 credits to be a full year, or 12 credits per semester. So that's something that that's their criteria. This helps the state track pace as it relates to credit completion. So you can see the class of 2021 showed a slight dip, 3% or so, from the previous cohort. You can see the class of the above table shows around 48% of PPS students completed 24 credits within that 12-month period post-high school graduation, while the previous year showed 51%. So the last 2 cohort decreases could be due to a variety of factors related to the pandemic. We may have had some graduates that didn't feel they were ready. Others may have decided to postpone college or take a part-time schedule due to many of those post-secondary institutions having to resort to remote or virtual learning back in that fall of 2020, as you all remember. So it'll be interesting to see how this data plays out over the next couple years, see if we can get back to the percentages that we saw in 2019, where we had 62% of our students complete 24 credits within that 12-month period. Similarly to college enrollment, the percent completing 24 credits increases as more time passes. And again, we remain above the state by 10%, but what we like to see is that at least 20% above the state, as we've seen kind of in our pre-pandemic numbers in these reports. And then lastly, on this slide, the orange box is just another way at the bottom there to highlight the percent of high school graduates who obtain that 24 credits within a 12-month time frame. All right, on data sheet 1.4.3 in your packet, we look at the percentage of students taking college remedial classes, which the state also tracks. So colleges report to the state what courses they deem as remedial, and that's what the data is based on here. So the top 3 tables show this data for all students and groups of students for the class of 2019, 2020, and class of 2021. Most of the subgroup numbers are pretty small, so we don't put a ton of weight when looking at comparisons, but it is data that, as you know, we keep an eye on. Some positives, though, if we were to look at that, is both students who receive free and reduced lunch and students with disabilities show us taking less remedial courses as the previous year, so that's a highlight. It's important to point out that over the last few years, we saw the percent of PPS graduates having a higher percentage of the remedial courses than the state. So this was not always the case, as those who have been on the board for a while remember, and you've heard this explanation a little bit before, but I'll just kind of reinforce it as one potential reason. We found that somewhere around 2016 and 2017, KVCC started to report a course called First Year Experience as a remedial course, which they hadn't previously. I don't know if folks remember that on the board. This course is not really viewed as a remedial course, definitely not in our eyes, and students, they take it because it's something that will enhance their college experience, and it has nothing to do with any type of content-related remediation. So again, not making excuses, but something that we need to consider because we do have a decent number of graduates that end up taking that their first year, and it can continue to be a factor in terms of those percentages. So we're down overall by 1% from last year and down 7% from the 2019 cohort. So that's a good thing in this report, having less percentage of our students taking remedial courses. And then if you look at the bottom graph, we break down remedial course by subject. So we see a slight increase in writing, a slight decrease in math remedial courses taken, and we do see a significant decrease in the percentage of remedial reading courses taken this past year. So that's a positive for sure. All right, now we look at 5-year cohort graduation and dropout rates over the last few years. So we hold pretty steady on both data sets for our 5-year cohorts. Our 2020 graduates were at about 98.71% graduation rate, and our 2022 graduation rate was at 97.89%. So we're well above the state average for 5-year cohort, which was around 84% at the state level. As for dropout rates, so when you see dropout rates or dropout as a category, it says reported in MER. So we typically will get notification if someone has dropped out. The state also takes into consideration when there's a MER, which is a missing expected record. Verifications, they cannot find where those folks that were supposed to graduate at a given timeline, where they went. So it's a little bit of both. Nonetheless, our dropout rates have held steady around the 1% mark for our traditional high schools compared to the state, which is typically around 11%. But I think it's important to note that we do not include community high school in this data set. We already know the challenges that come with offering an alternative program and getting students across the finish line. So we need to be careful when making comparisons here, as the state data, it does include any alternative high schools that are within the state. All right, let's flip the page now. Let's look at the 4-year graduation and dropout rate on data sheet 1.4.4B. So PPS has held steady around 96% for its graduation rate as it relates to 4-year cohorts compared to the state, which is somewhere around 80% for the class of 2022. Those that did not graduate within the 4 years, they're put into one of 3 categories, as you'll see in the table up top. And so those are either dropout, off-track continuing, meaning they could have taken summer school, they could have taken some virtual classes, and then that moved them into the next 5-year cohort. And then the third being students who earn their GED. Those are 3 categories. As for dropout rate for the 4-year cohorts, we've stayed around 1% for a few years, but we did see just over a 1% increase with the class of 2022, so 13 students compared to 6 the year prior. And the state also, they saw a slight increase as well. We did see the impact of the pandemic on some of our students getting behind. Therefore, this may have contributed to the slight increase. We'll pay close attention to those trends, as we move forward. Hopefully that goes back down in the future reports. I do know both high schools had a higher number from what they had typically used to seeing, so it wasn't Northern or Central. They both had higher numbers collectively, so both traditional high schools are seeing and experiencing that. All right, now we can look at comparator school 4-year cohort graduation rate. So we have Portage, Northern, and PC and how they compare to the other 11 comparator high schools. These schools are listed, typically you see these reports listed by economically disadvantaged. That's not how it is. It's just listed by alphabetical order. This time around, the first 2 schools on the left are PC and PM. So each school has the 3 cohorts shown in the bar graphs for the class of 2020, 21, as well as 2022. So that light gray bar is 2020, in the middle is the darker gray bar representing 2021, and then the blue is the class of 2022. So both PPS high schools had a graduation rate just over 96% for 2022, and we see that there's 3 other comparable high schools that were around 1% higher, and they were just at that 97% mark. Those schools were Hudsonville, Huron Valley, and Zeeland East. So overall, we're looking good, and we're right up there with the top high schools in our comparator group. As for career and technical education, so CTE, as we heard earlier, data sheet 1.4.5 looks at the percentage of our PPS juniors and seniors enrolled in any CTE course. That includes EFE. These courses have mostly been switched to CTE, but all data is pulled regardless of the label, whether it's CTE or an EFE course. Here we see that 36% of our juniors and seniors are enrolled in some type of CTE coursework. These numbers have stayed consistent over the years. There's a handful of classes that provide a license or certification. There's nursing, culinary arts, information and technology. You can see the breakdown on the charts at the top of the slide, but essentially we saw an increase this year, approximately 6% of those students working towards a license or a certification. And then additionally, we have around 7% of our juniors and seniors enrolled in courses in which they perform work in industry. So that's dental assisting, law enforcement, medical first response, as well as our co-op workers that are out there. That also saw an increase for 22-23. The new CTE Center, as mentioned, set to open fall of 2025. May draw higher interest as it will be centralized, and obviously we'll have expanded course offerings, so we'll see how that impacts or plays into these numbers in the future. All right, lastly, we look at ACT Work Keys. This is the National Career Readiness Certificates over the last 2 years. There's 4 levels of work readiness in which students can achieve. So the lower level being bronze, then silver, gold, and then the highest being platinum. As you all know, testing was suspended in spring of 2020, so there's no data up in that left table for the class of 2021. But overall, we're down around 4% for the class of 2023 when looking at all students, at 94% compared to 98% with the class of 2022. You'll notice the class of 2022 had lower numbers due to testing being optional in spring of 2021. Therefore, the numbers are not a true representation of the entire class. I think we had just over 2/3 of that cohort test that spring. So the class of 2023, though, we had close to 100% participation rate as testing requirements came back into play. So it's difficult to make some comparisons, because that's over almost 200 student difference as it relates to test participation between the 2 cohorts. But nonetheless, we have the data. We can see that our highest percent of students earn the platinum level, so that's a plus and a positive. The bottom graph shows us that we stayed within a percent or 2 at all the levels over the last 2 years. But again, difficult to compare due to some of the circumstances over the last couple of years. Okay, that's one of our shorter monitoring reports. I did my best to expedite that, but not to lose any detail. So thanks for listening, and if anyone has any questions or comments, I'll be happy to try and answer. If I don't have the answer today, I'll make sure I capture your thoughts and bring them back to our team and give you a response through Superintendent Belay in a timely manner.
That was a great monitoring report, and I thought your delivery was really good.
That might be one of my quickest.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Anyone else?
What's on your minds?
I'd love to see EMC data included in this in the future.
Okay, just a couple quick questions that may come to us on a quick follow-up. But on the last one, on the ACT work keys, and so we dropped a little bit there. And my question is, did you have a statewide or any kind of comparator number? You know, if everybody slid 4% because of the pandemic, then that's one thing. So just that as a technical note. And then the other one that jumped out, was it dropouts? Small number, but it was up. And just wondering if there was a statewide number or any kind of a comparator number that, was that something that was prevalent in the state? So that might be a follow-up kind of thing. The other question I had.
Right there, if you look, Bo.
Take me back to the.
Look at the, look at 1.4.4B. Yep. So when we ticked up at the bottom of that slide, it's got the orange rectangle around it. Yep. Above, you can see the state also bumped up a little bit. Yep. It wasn't percent like we did, but it was maybe 5.
Got it.
Or so.
Got it.
So they did see a tick up, but we went a little bit higher with that 1%.
Appreciate it. Yep. And the last thing I caught was the remedials, and you addressed that. So, I mean, I think this is, I mean, my, high-level take on this, this is really meaty. This is really super important. Yeah. And it's good stuff for us to see, and we look pretty good.
Yeah, it looks decent overall. Again, it's kind of, like we say on a lot of things, coming out of the pandemic, is this is kind of that new baseline. So let's take a look at what happens, over the next year or so and see if we can get back to those pre-pandemic pre-pandemic numbers for a lot of these reports that we presented this year, so.
Do we only get information from colleges and universities within the state? Or how do you, like, get all this?
It's from my school data, so it would be
Okay.
the data hub for just schools within our state, yes. I have access to others, but I know that's the data source that, you know, Melissa pulls from for these.
My last comment would be for some of our newer trustees is that it's natural for this data to jump around a little bit year to year. And so, you know, in some of these where it's jumping and slightly jumping in a direction we don't want, hang in there, and quite often the next year it comes back. So, well, take a 30,000-foot level from a trustee perspective.
Yeah, for example, if more students 1 year are going to out-of-state colleges, it's going to look like a dip in our data, but it may not really be a dip, so it's just a kind of way for, and as more students go into CTE programming too, that may show a dip in 4-year college enrollment. So you have to be careful about what conclusions.
Right, a favorable dip in college enrollment. It could be that these kids are ending up in better spots for them.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other comments on 1.4? All those in favor of approving monitoring report 1.4, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The monitoring report is approved. And we'll now move to our next monitoring report, 2.9, emergency superintendent succession on page 77. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.9, emergency superintendent succession, as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mark?
This is probably one of the shortest reports that you get on the executive limitations, and it basically says that I need to have no fewer than 2 executives familiar with the board and mine issues and processes, and I've reported on that, and it really remains unchanged from previous years, other than the names have changed.
To protect the innocent.
And then you also have our most recent organizational chart there that shows the various positions that report at central office level. So I can answer any questions if you have them.
I don't think there's any discussion or questions, correct? All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.9, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The monitoring report is approved. Our next monitoring report is 2.11, long-term asset planning. There's a motion, please, on page 82.
Yes, President Van Antwerp, I'd like to make the motion that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.11, long-term asset planning, as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mark?
So much of what's in this report kind of parallels some of the information that Johnny was presenting in his report. This report contains 7 subsections, and what I've done in reporting on each of the subsections is there's a little bit of historical data information in the at the beginning of each report that kind of reviews the past and the processes that we've used to get to where we are. And then there's new language that really covers the activities that we've been having during this past year. So just to highlight a couple of areas here, on 11.1 on page 84, just a statement there about the progress that has been made since the last monitoring report in the getting prepared for the bidding and the building process, the frequency of our biweekly meetings, and some of the work that we've been doing. Also mention the fact that the Board Facilities Committee works with us, with administration, to identify projects through the district's Building Site Sinking Fund, and those projects that are currently listed there that board should be aware of. that we've gotten your permission to do. 11.2 speaks to the 3 different phases that our projects have been lumped under. And we're currently in phase 3, working on the facility needs that were approved by voters in the $175 million bond that was approved in August of 2021. And you heard much of that plan of what we're doing to address phase 3 needs that was presented earlier during the update. 11.3 is on the impact on academics and curriculum, and we've had a lot of involvement of staff in the development of the educational specifications, the guiding principles, and the facilities master plan. And we've been doing a lot of collaborating this year around what those spaces look like. So we have had, actually academics is driving the design of the buildings rather than vice versa. So that's really the intention behind how we're designing our facilities, is how we're going to impact or how we're going to deliver curriculum that those buildings support that. Future needs. Again, that some of that is a repeat of the data that was looked at for designing through the Designing the Future process, and an example of what we're looking at, the demographics is, really caused us to take a look at Central L and move that from a 450 to a 600 student building, to recognize that there is growth at the south end of the district and ways that we can ease overcrowding in some of our other facilities. 11.5 is about deviation from the original plan, and we have, the plan really is decided by the voters, and that's what we're going to deliver. You heard today some of the challenges that we have with delivering that, and what our plan is to continue with what the voters approved. And then 11.6 is primarily around the change order process, which you received information on. We haven't had any change orders that the board has had to act on during this past year. And the last section is a relatively new section. I think it's the first time it's being reported on, and that's about the superintendent should not make any decisions that fail to provide for equitable educational opportunities. And well, I think the first thing people think about is what our buildings look like, that they all be the same as being equitable, and that's virtually impossible to do. If we were to build all these buildings at the same time, we could make that happen, but 2 examples that we faced last time was as we built our 2 new middle schools, we tried to incorporate elements into West Middle School when we renovated that could give staff and students some collaborative learning space. So that's an example of how we've tried to create some equitable circumstances at that level. We have similar challenges now. 12th Street and Lake Center are completely different looking buildings, what our new buildings will be looking like and feeling like. But where we really look at equitable opportunities is through the curriculum we deliver, the services that we provide, and the support that we give to our students. Those things are equal across the curriculum, across our buildings, and we make sure that we have outstanding educators, effective leaders, classroom support, and support staff in each of our buildings. We're not differentiating where students have to go to one building or another to receive those services. So that's primarily where we look at the equitable programming, knowing that there's always going to be some differences in the facilities that our kids are educated in. So that's the summary of the report. Hopefully you had a chance to look at that a little more closely, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mark on this one? Mark, thanks for your explanation. Thanks for the report. It's just really solid, and there's a lot of work on these pages, that's for sure. Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.11, long-term asset planning, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the monitoring report is approved. We've now moved to the discussion phase of our agenda, and we only have 7 items to discuss. And Paul is first with the K-RESA 2023-24 general fund budget.
and Superintendent Belay. I do not have a presentation for you this evening. Hopefully I will be quick but informative at the same time. Coming to you tonight in your packet is a resolution, formality's sake, that the ISD has to share with us their budgets before May 1st. And it's the school district's obligation to either pass the resolution or not pass the resolution. One thing that Portage has done in relation to this resolution is we have amended language slightly in the resolution to state that we have a limited review of the said budget documents that is shared with us and limited oversight of the financial affairs of the K-RESA organization. So I included in the board packet the 30,000 view, as Bo likes to refer to it as, what the assumptions that they took into play to build their budget on the revenue and the expenditure side. And that's the same information that's provided to me at our meeting that we had after MSBO Friday afternoon on April 28th when everything was shared with us. So I hurried up and prepared the memo before I went on vacation so that you guys would have it in your board meeting for your board packet. So tonight it's just to bring it to your attention that it'll be on the agenda for approval at the next meeting. All the information that I have is what's in that memo, and if you have specific questions, I can take those back to K-RESA. Randy might even be able to address them possibly, not to put him on the spot, but so that's the reason for this item tonight. And it's just the general fund budget that you're approving, not the special education budget. And this has to do with legislation that was passed about 19 years ago based on some activities that were happening on the east side of the state at another ISD. So.
Any questions for Paula? Thank you, Paula. Okay, our next discussion item is again related to K-RESA. This is the biennial election resolution number 2. If you recall at our last meeting, we chose our delegates for the election on June 5th, and Terry is our delegate, Kimberly is our alternate. And this is to inform you that there are, as of today, was the filing deadline. There are 2 people running for re-election to 2 seats, and that's myself and the president, Skip Knowles, and we'll be taking action on this at our next meeting because of the timing requirement indicated in the memo here. Any questions on the K-RESA biennial election? Great. Now we go to our next discussion item, which is policy revisions, and turn it over to you, Mark.
This is another one of those Neola updates that coming to you for first reading. I've outlined each of the policies that we are currently reviewing and have made revisions to. They're all operational policies. This time around, I don't think there's anything in the board bylaws. A lot of them are revisions based on current law, and some of them are best practices, but again, if anyone wants to see any of these in detail, you're welcome to stop at the office and take a look at our scribbles and notations that we made on those. But each member of the team, the executive leadership team that is responsible for an area has reviewed them, and they are, the ones that are coming to you are being recommended by Neola and their legal counsel. I can answer some questions here, but if you really want to look at the policies, you have to come into the office and take a look.
Any questions for Mark? Super. Our next discussion item is number 4. Pretty simple to understand. We're going to buy some furniture.
Thank you. The first of our 2 recommendations is related to school furniture. I'm recommending the Board of Education approve the purchase of school furniture from VS America Incorporated in the amount of $66,632.60. The cost of this purchase will come from our 2023 general fund budget. You will note that VS Furniture is providing for us 48 desks or tables, 49 chairs, which is related for flexible seating. As part of our annual capital outlay process, our school prioritized their expenditure, their equipment and furniture needs. The requested furniture is aligned with our vision for flexible student furniture in the new elementary schools. The majority of the furniture in this recommendation will be used as pilot furniture for Central L and Haverhill. This purchase is made using Omnia cooperative contract with VS America, in which there was no need for an RFP. All prices were already pre-negotiated on our behalf. And then also, in addition to this recommendation, we've included a summary of other items that are part of our capital outlay process. They are below the board threshold, but we did want to inform the board of those other areas as well. I'm happy to answer any questions about furniture.
Is the goal to have these for the fall?
For the fall, correct.
Any other questions for Johnny?
I have a quick one. So this is 48 desks and tables and 49 chairs. So rounding that up, that's about 100 pieces, which means that we're looking at about 6,000 per item?
No, not all,
Okay.
not all.
I didn't think that sounded right,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
knew you'd be able to explain.
So with flexible seatings, these are a variety of different furniture pieces that we're looking at, some of which are come in different sizes and shapes. So it's not just a standard chair in all cases, but when you just combine them together, there are 48 or 49 different pieces of furniture that represents a desk or table and a chair. But this is not the uniform, classroom where every single chair and desk are alike. With the flexible furniture, that Dr. Kelly Jensenius and her team, as well as working with our vendors, what we're seeing in our design is that students will have choice in what's best for them. So some of the furniture could be higher tables where students could stand up. Some of them could be the hokey chairs, wobble chairs, all of the alike. So this is an array of different furniture selections, not just a standard chair and table. Also with this, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, with the flexible furniture with our chairs and our tables, is designed to be mobile so that students and teachers could rearrange the furniture themselves without having to call in a custodian to move heavy chairs and tables around. So one example of flexible furniture would be that some of the tables we're looking at comes with 2 wheels on it and a standard 2 legs. And that way students can unlock the legs and pick up the table, roll it across. Also, many of the furniture selections are stackable, so you can rearrange the classroom, use the center space, this open area, and reconfigure the classroom in minutes. So these are all the different types of things involved in flexible furniture.
Thank you for the explanation.
Anything else for Johnny on the furniture? Okay, Johnny, do the wrestling mats.
All right, wrestling mats. I recommend the Board of Education approve the purchase of 2 wrestling mats. This is for Central High School for Wrestlet sports products in the amount of $30,488.60. The cost of this purchase will come from the 23-24 general fund SOAR budget. And this purchase will provide our students and student athletes at Central High access to wrestling mats for use during PE classes during the school day, and also for athletics after school. The wrestling program at Central in particular has seen an increase in participation over time, with more student athletes participating in wrestling over the past decade. Our current mats are between 10 and 30 years old. The older style mats are heavy and difficult to move. Central High School would put these new mats into use immediately. The newer mats are much lighter to transport and easier to set up for competitions and matches. These items were competitively bid through our formal bidding process. We did receive 2 responses. We've included that bid tab. While Wrestlet was not our lowest bid, their bid did meet our specifications as well as our warranty that we wanted to have in place. So again, this is for Central High School, 2 wrestling mats for the next school year. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Johnny?
It'll be great fun to see wrestling mats that are not those big, old, impossible to drag.
They are quite heavy. The older ones, I think sometimes we try to put them on some version of a dolly to move them around, so.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We have two discussion items left, the transportation iPad system and the spring student Chromebook purchase, and Dan's going to handle both of them.
All right, first up is the iPad-based navigation system for our buses. We've been using the same transportation software in this district for, I can't even begin to remember. It was basically installed as is in 2001 when I started. But we finally selected a new software package. This package is cloud-based. It's going to give us a lot of opportunities to bring some new technologies to our buses. This specific one is not only a navigation system, but it actually includes all of the bus routes and all of the bus stops for the drivers. So they know exactly where they need to go to pick up kids. This is becoming more and more of a need for us because we're having additional substitute bus drivers, and bus drivers are frequently driving routes that they're not familiar with. And so we see this as definitely a safety issue for our buses. The lion's share of this cost is actually the mounting hardware and the professional installation of these mounts in the buses. As the board is aware, school buses are subject to much more strict safety rules than traditional passenger vehicles, and this system is designed to meet those needs. The iPads themselves are provided directly from the vendor. They're custom loaded with this special software on them, and they can only be used for this purpose, so there's no risk of other distractions or misuse of these iPads while they're in the buses themselves. The upfront cost of just not quite $70,000 will actually be coming from the 2019 bond supplemental fund. That will be corrected in the final memo that you'll get in your next packet. But the annual cost to maintain them will have to continue to come from the general fund. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Did you say 2001?
2019, sorry. Oh, no, the software.
Yeah. The existing.
Last major upgrade that I can recall happened just before I was hired. So there might have been a minor one in there somewhere, but it's been a while. It's been great software. You know, I have no complaints, but we definitely want to kind of move into a more of a modern era with what we're trying to do.
Definitely.
So.
Yes, sir.
All right, the second one is our annual Chromebook purchase for our students. Another 1,400 Chromebooks coming off the REMC bid list in an amount here of not quite $350,000. The lion's share of this we paid through with ESSER funds. The actual licenses, though, don't qualify for ESSER monies. We have to purchase those licenses out of a different area, and we'll use general fund for that. We're still seeing about a 5-year useful life for Chromebooks. A lot of it depends upon the availability of parts for when they need to repair. Another pressure for the life of Chromebooks actually is state testing. The state tends to be a little aggressive with the minimum specifications for these Chromebooks, and that sometimes causes us to have to accelerate their replacement. We're staying with the HP G-Series line of Chromebooks. They've served us very well, and overall we found the parts are relatively easy to obtain. With that, I don't have much more to say on this topic unless the board has questions.
Dan, can you remind us about how many Chromebooks the district has total?
In total, we operate with a little over 10,000 active units. We do have spares on reserve, but we have a significant fleet of Chromebooks in this district, yes.
So this updates about 14% of those.
Yep, more or less, yeah.
So does daily use of Chromebooks start in middle school? When do they start using?
Well, we have Chromebooks available in all of our schools. At the elementary schools, they live in carts in the classroom. And then starting in 6th grade is when we assign devices to students so they can take them home. And the lion's share of these Chromebooks will actually be targeted at the 6-12 grade levels. The elementary Chromebooks actually tend to last a little bit longer because they do live in those carts all the time.
Anything else for Dan? Thank you, sir. Thank you to all our presenters tonight. And for those of you who bet we'd be done by 8, you've lost. Anyway, if you could hand me your board self-assessments and monitoring report evaluations before you leave. We've reached the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Need dinner.
She's made her own great dessert.
There you go.
See you, Mark. See you in the morning.